Hello, my name is Corina Peter and I work in the German restoration projects at the Alfred-Wegener-Institute, and we aim to restore the European oyster populations in the German Bight and at the deeper sublittoral areas in the marine protected areas at the moment. And at the same time, right now, we build up a hatchery for restoration purposes on the island of Helgoland. And in the second project, which is the Proceed project, I work on the outreach work, on the outreach materials, and one big part of those materials are educational materials. So we prepare materials that can be used in the school, and as a target audience, we chose German high schools, and that's what my talk today is about. I don't know how it is in other countries because I've been to school in Germany, and so in Germany you have this standard ecology unit in every school you go. So you have biology as a subject, and in that you have ecology at some point of your school time, and in that there will be the definition of the ecological terms so that you know what's a habitat, what's an ecosystem, about food webs, parasites, what are prey-hunter relationships, population dynamics, and so on. So all the ecological basic knowledge you learn in school, and normally, at least in Germany, so my whole talk is about Germany. I'm very interested about how it's in other countries, but here normally you have the standard ecosystems like forest, lakes, or ocean, but ocean also more in the countries close to the ocean. So in Bavaria, for example, where I went to school, I pretty much learned all about the lake because they are present there. And our idea is now to introduce the native oyster reef. So the reef, the oyster itself, but also more the reef and the habitat it builds as a new ecosystem in school. So to produce material, so the teacher at the end say, okay, I'm kind of annoyed by the forest, I'm annoyed by the lake, I learned everything about it and I did it for 10 years now. There is material for a new ecosystem, and that's the oyster reef, and everything we need is in there, so we use this. So that would be the biggest goal we have in the project, and if we reach it, we will see. But we will focus on this ecological importance of the oyster reef, and this is, you probably know this picture from the TNC guidelines. It's just a German version of it, more or less. So we focused on the oyster reefs in the subtitle, and in the German North Sea, it's really deep. So we're at 20 to 30 meters where we want to restore it. So it's kind of different from the coastal habitat. Most of you probably are restoring the oyster reefs. And so we focus on this habitat it builds and on the ecosystem services. So that's very important for us to introduce those ecosystem services and the benefit the oyster reef brings to the rest of the ecosystem. And then, as I said, use this oyster reef as an ecosystem model, so that the students learn all the basic ecological knowledge on there, so all the terms and the definitions, and then from there they could transfer it to another ecosystem. So that's the goal. And so maybe for you it's most interesting how we did it so far, and that's why I just kind of described these steps we already did or are still gonna take so far. So first we needed to define the age class we want to prepare it for, because it's a totally different thing to prepare material for the kindergarten than to prepare it for people who are 17 years old. And it's very complicated, but it's just to see that's the German school system. So I thought it might be interesting to see how it's built up. So we have kindergarten, primary school, and then we have these higher schools, and we are focused on this orange frame, so on everything from the age 12 up to the phase where they are actually learning for the Abitur. So that's the certificate you need to go to university. So that's the students we want to aim to, or the classes. So from the 7th grade up, to get this material too. And then the next step was to research the curriculum of these classes. So what is already done there? Would it fit into to make materials or to prepare materials, or is it just something that's not happening there? Because then it wouldn't be good to prepare something, because no one will use materials that are not they don't fit to their curriculum. So that's Germany. And these are the different colors are different federal states, a little bit of geography now. And just what I wanted to say is that there are a lot of federal states, and every federal state has its own curriculum. So we kind of had to check for a lot, and we just focused on the states Bremen. So that's where I sit right now. So I don't know if you see my cursor, but that's Bremen, Niedersachsen, which is Lower Saxony, and Schleswig-Holstein. So these are the federal states that are closest to us and to the AVI, so the institute, and also the closest to the North Sea, because there you have this local connection to the ecosystem. And so we thought if it's working somewhere, it's gonna work there first, and then we can try to get to the other states, more or less, or work together with them. And then when we figured this out, we checked with teachers or some experts if it's practically feasible. So we kind of send around questionnaires and ask the teachers, can you imagine using this ecosystem? What would you need to use it? How should the materials be made? Whatever. And what we got back for feedback was, of course, just a little low percentage of what we sent out, how it is with every questionnaire. And but the ones we got back was that they could use it, they can imagine using it, but also what I found very interesting, for example, that they immediately asked about the Pacific oyster as well. So as an invasive species, in Germany, it's kind of like this one marine invasive species everyone knows about. So they were immediately focusing on this. So yeah, I would like to use it, but as an invasive species, and the Pacific oyster was kind of the reason that the European oyster disappeared. That was not what was happening, but they thought. And so we were like, oh, okay, so that's actually what is in the mind of teachers. So we should kind of at least pick it up in the material to clarify how this relationship was or is, and that it's not like that not the Pacific oyster is kind of, yeah, the reason why the European oyster can't come back or was gone at the beginning. So that was very interesting. So for me, it was a big way of opening my eyes to really asking people out there how it's really coming to them, what is really going on, because we know about all the ecological basics, but they don't. And so yeah, that was really important for me to say, okay, we have to go to the target group first to ask them and then do our materials on it, and not the other way around, because then they're not going to be used. And that was also the next thing, that you need to choose methods which you want to use. And for schools, there are so many different methods. I went to school as a student, and then I stopped thinking about it. And now I come back and see all these methods teachers think about, how they can bring knowledge to the students. And it's really interesting how many different methods are there which you don't recognize when you're a student. And so what we planned now is to offer kind of different sizes of our materials. So we kind of structured them into S, M, and L, like small, medium, and large. So for S, it would be the teacher can just use it as a transfer topic for 1 hour. So they already know everything about ecosystems, and they just have like one text about the oyster, and then they have to bring every knowledge they have into this text. Or they have to produce a food web from a text about the oyster reef, whatever. Then medium would be really explaining everything on the oyster reef. And then large, we have, from the Alfred-Wegener-Institute, we have a school lab on Helgoland, which is very, very nice. So there you can go with your school class and do excursions and learn everything in the field. And we collaborate with them and try to develop also protocols for oyster experiments, and that would be the large package. So you learned about the oysters, and then you see them and work with them. And our goal is kind of to, whatever the teacher needs, he can get from us. So if he wants a transfer topic, he can get it from us. If he wants yeah, something to kind of switch the ecosystem, so he doesn't want the forest anymore, okay, then use this. We have everything for you. So that's the goal. And when we send out the questionnaire to the teachers, that's what we also got back. So they don't want to research a lot. They really want to have a package, and then when they read it and when they use it, they have everything they need. And also with exercises, for example, with sheets put together, they want to have little modules, so they could put part A from one sheet and then C from another, and they want everything there so that they don't have to go to the internet again and research stuff. That's really what they said. And so our first example, what we already did was, yeah, the method is called group puzzle. I can explain it later for the people that are interested, but it's more or less, you have different texts for different groups, and everyone will become an expert in this one topic, and then they share it amongst each other. So that's basically the method. So we produce background information for the teacher on the method, on ecosystem, oyster reef, and then we produce the material for the students and writing texts. And that's also something different. If you write a scientific text, it's something completely different than to write it for students. Because yeah, you have to just change your way of thinking, how to explain things and how to name it. Because if you always use the terminology, yeah, they will just read over it. And so it's very, very good to also give those text passages then to students in the age you want to, because they will completely, then they will say, what's an ecosystem, what's an habitat, and if you didn't explain it before, they will not really read it. So that was also very interesting to work with them. And for this, we also had a cooperation with high school students. So they come to the AVI and they really have school in the institute, which is a huge opportunity for them, but it's also very cool for us because they have this kind of projects where they have to work with scientists, and we were happy to be them, the scientists, so they could kind of, in their project, they developed student material for students by students. So they immediately, for example, said they don't like the group puzzle. They don't like it how they did it so far, so they would never come up with something like that. So they did it differently, and they now are in the moment developing the material to cover this whole ecological basic knowledge, and then use it on the oyster reefs of the North Sea. So kind of an application to it. And what's also very cool is that they did videos. So on the left you see, yeah, you can find the videos for Pacific oysters on YouTube. Like there are a lot of them with the filtration experiment, where you have 2 aquaria, one with oysters, one without, and the one without will stay dirty as it is, so with the particles in there, and the one on the left over time will of course clear up because the oysters are filtering. So that's what they filmed and did the time-lapse video, and that's kind of cool. And the other video I can show you, I hope it works. It's with fluorescenium, I think, fluorescenium. In Germany it's uranin, so it's this kind of substance which is fluorescent and colors the water, and you can see the filtration activity of the oyster with it. And so, see, yeah, it's working. So we put it in front of the oyster, and then on the right side of the oyster, you can see how it comes out soon, I hope. Yeah, there you can see. And I like this experiment in the video very much because also for the students, it was nice to see that it's not just that the oyster is living, that it's not just something made out of, yeah, looks like a stone, doesn't open up, doesn't have cute eyes, whatever. So it's like, it's not a typical animal for them. And in this case, they really saw how fast the oyster is filtering water, that it's alive, and that it's kind of really efficient in what the oyster is doing, because this took, I don't know, 30 seconds, and then you already saw how it filtered the water in and then already ejected the things it didn't need. So it was kind of nice, and we will use these videos also for class and in school. to provide these videos for the teachers so that they have something visual to kind of open the class with, or open the whole topic with, whatever. But this is also something nice to do with whoever. So also with smaller children, for example. So I really like these experiments. And yes, at the end, that's what you already, yeah, what you need to think about too is how will you make it available. So when you did all this work and put all this work in and made all these huge materials and nice and tested it, how will you make it available? And yeah, in our case, it will be a homepage for NORA material. It could be the NORA homepage and an outreach download site where we could also think about if we do something together, then we put it on there, then it can be shared. And in our case, we can also, I guess every country has this journals for school materials, educational material, where you can hand things in and they publish it. So that's just some examples how you can distribute your material, because it's also important that you don't just wait for teachers to come to you and say, oh, you have a nice project, do you happen to have education material about it? Because that's, yeah, probably not happening. So now at the end, I was thinking about, okay, why am I telling you all of this, and what could NORA benefit, or we benefit from NORA, whatever, like how can it be connected? So if you happen to know someone, or if you know it by yourself, I would be very happy if some of you has already educational material on oyster reefs, or knows from US maybe, probably something, because they have this huge restoration projects going on, and for sure they do have outreach material on it. Or even has practical experience on their own of developing school materials. So if you already saw, okay, that's what we tried as well, what you are now saying, and it didn't work, then please contact me or whatever, we can talk. It would be very helpful. And also illustrative materials. So like the graphs and the TNC guidelines, they are very awesome to use. And also what I'm especially interested in at the moment would be food webs. So food webs around the oyster reef, if there already is something, what we could use as a basis for our food webs for the school materials. And on the other side, what could we do for NORA or whatever, like what's our input as a project? Of course, like everything I just showed you, I can give to you, I can talk to you about. So if you're interested in anything and say, okay, that's interesting for our project, we would like to do something like that as well, I can provide it to you. And also, like I said, for the NORA website, we can work together on English versions or any language I don't speak, but of it. And yeah, so that we kind of interconnect the projects, and that when we develop something very good, that it doesn't stay in Germany, because if it's really good, it's also helpful for France or for UK, whatever. So yeah, and that was more or less also the intention I had behind all this idea of outreach group. Yeah, so that was me. Ta-da.